Most people planning 7 days in Italy make the same mistake before the trip even starts. They try to fit the entire country into 1 week. Rome, Florence, Venice, Amalfi Coast, Tuscany, Cinque Terre, maybe Milan, maybe Naples, maybe a quick stop at Lake Como because it looked beautiful online. And technically, you can move around Italy fast enough to touch a lot of those places. But that does not mean you actually experienced Italy. It usually means you spent 7 days dragging luggage through train stations while the country kept trying to slow you down. There are 2 ways to spend 7 days in Italy. One gives you a real trip. The other gives you proof that you change cities a lot. And the difference usually comes down to 3 decisions: how many bases you choose, whether you treat travel days as real days, and whether you understand that Italy rewards rhythm more than speed. The first mistake is thinking 7 days means seeing all the icons. Italy is dangerous for planners because almost every place sounds non-negotiable. Rome has the Colosseum and the Vatican. Florence has Renaissance art and Tuscany. Venice has the canals. Naples has pizza and Pompeii. The Amalfi Coast has the views. Cinque Terre has the cliffs. Lake Como has the villas. The problem is not that any of these places are overrated. The problem is that they are too good to be treated like quick stops in the same short week. That is why the cleanest first-time Italy itinerary is usually Rome, Florence, and Venice, with maybe one carefully chosen side trip if your timing is good. It is not the most original route, but that is not the point. It works because it gives you 3 very different versions of Italy without making the trip collapse under its own ambition. Rome gives you ancient history, big city energy, food, ruins, churches, and chaos. Florence gives you art, architecture, walking, Tuscan rhythm, and a slower middle chapter. Venice gives you the surreal ending, the city that makes no sense until you stop trying to make it practical. The second mistake is starting in the wrong mindset. Rome is not a city you conquer in a day. It is too layered for that. Tourists arrive with a list: Colosseum, Roman Forum, Trevi Fountain, Pantheon, Vatican, Spanish Steps, Trastevere, maybe Villa Borghese if there is time. And then they wonder why Rome felt crowded, hot, and strangely exhausting. Not because Rome failed, because they treated it like a museum with traffic. If you understand Rome, you give it 2 real days and you stop pretending every famous site has to be attacked at the same speed. Day 1 should be arrival, adjustment, walking, food, and the first taste of the city. See the Pantheon area, Piazza Navona, Trevi Fountain, maybe Trastevere in the evening, but do not turn the first day into a forced march after a flight. Rome will give you enough intensity. You do not need to create more. Day 2 is where Rome earns its place. This is the day for the Colosseum, Roman Forum, Palatine Hill, or the Vatican depending on what matters more to you. But here's the catch. Trying to do both ancient Rome and the Vatican deeply on the same day is where a lot of trips start feeling like homework. If you know this, you choose one major anchor and build the day around it. If you do not, you spend the whole day moving between masterpieces too tired to care properly. The third mistake is treating Florence like a quick art stop. Florence looks small on a map, and that fools people. They think one afternoon is enough because the historic center is compact. But Florence is not just about seeing a museum and leaving. Florence works when you slow down enough to feel the scale of it. The Duomo appearing between streets, the Arno at sunset, the Altrano feeling calmer than the obvious center. The way the city becomes better when you stop chasing every famous painting like you're being graded. If you understand Florence, you give it at least 2 nights. Take the train from Rome, arrive without panic, walk the center, see the Duomo from outside if you do not want another timed entry day immediately, cross the Ponte Vecchio, and let the evening carry the city. The next day can be for the Accademia, the Uffizi, a slower neighborhood walk, or a Tuscan side trip if art is not your priority. If you do not understand Florence, you arrive, take a few photos, stand in a line, and leave saying it was beautiful, but smaller than expected. That is not Florence's fault. That is pacing. The first half of the trip is about learning Italy's rhythm. The second half is about protecting that rhythm from the most tempting mistake of all, adding just one more place. This is where people start sabotaging the itinerary. They think, if I'm already in Florence, why not add Pisa? If I'm already going to Venice, why not add Milan? If I'm already in Italy, why not squeeze in Amalfi? And one extra stop does not sound dangerous. But in a 7-day trip, every extra stop steals something. It steals a morning, a train connection, a relaxed meal, a second night, or the ability to wake up somewhere without immediately leaving it. If you defend the Rome, Florence, Venice route, you come home feeling like Italy had chapters. If you keep adding stops, you come home with a camera roll full of famous places and a memory of constantly being in transit. That is the difference. Italy is not hard to move through, especially with high-speed trains connecting major cities, but movement still costs attention. And attention is exactly what Italy deserves most. The fourth mistake is misunderstanding Venice. Venice is probably the easiest city in Italy to overexpect and underexperience at the same time. Tourists arrive expecting magic, and Venice can absolutely deliver it. But if you only visit the most crowded version of it, around San Marco, Rialto, and the main daytime routes, Venice can feel expensive, packed, and almost unreal in the wrong way. The city is still beautiful, but it starts feeling like a stage set everyone is trying to photograph at once. If you understand Venice, you give it a night. That is the secret. Venice changes when the day trippers leave. The light softens, the alleys get quieter, the canals feel less like content and more like a place, and suddenly the city starts making sense. If you treat Venice as a quick final checkbox, you may leave thinking it was crowded and overpriced. If you sleep there, wander early or late, and let yourself get lost away from the obvious streets, Venice becomes the ending this itinerary needs. The fifth mistake is choosing the wrong season for the wrong version of Italy. Summer sounds perfect because Italy in summer looks perfect online. But July and August can bring heavy crowds, high prices, and serious heat, especially in Rome, Florence, Venice, and southern regions. If you want beach energy, long nights, and a full summer atmosphere, that can work. But if you want comfortable city walking, easier museum days, and less pressure, peak summer may be the hardest version of the exact trip you imagined. That is why April, May, September, and October often make more sense for a first Italy trip focused on cities. Travel guides commonly point to spring and fall as strong shoulder season windows because the weather is usually more comfortable and the crowds are less intense than peak summer. If you know that, Italy becomes easier before you even arrive. If you do not, you may spend half the trip wondering why the dream city feels like a hot queue with gelato. The sixth mistake is treating meals like filler between attractions. In Italy, food is not just something you squeeze in after the real sightseeing. It is part of how the day works. Tourists who rush from landmark to landmark often end up eating beside the most obvious square, at the most obvious hour, in the most obvious restaurant. And then they go home saying Italian food was good, but maybe not life-changing. That is almost impressive because Italy is one of the easiest countries in the world to eat well if you stop treating meals like emergencies. If you understand this, you plan less and eat better. You walk a few streets away from the landmark. You give yourself time for a real lunch or a slower dinner. You do not expect every restaurant with a view to be the best restaurant in the area. You let food become part of the rhythm instead of a reward you earn after exhausting yourself. If you do not, Italy quietly turns into expensive pasta near monuments. The seventh mistake is not leaving a buffer. 7 days in Italy sounds like enough until a train delay, a museum line, a hot afternoon, a late arrival, or a tired morning steals part of the plan. The buffer is what saves the trip. It lets you return to a neighborhood you liked, have a slower meal, see the thing you missed, or do absolutely nothing for 2 hours without feeling like the itinerary is falling apart. And in Italy, doing nothing in the right place can feel more memorable than forcing one more attraction. So here is the clean version. Day 1, arrive in Rome and adjust. Day 2, give Rome one major anchor, either ancient Rome or the Vatican, instead of trying to destroy yourself with both. Day 3, use Rome for the other anchor or a slower neighborhood day, then travel to Florence if the schedule works. Day 4, give Florence a real day. Day 5, use Florence for art, food, or a carefully chosen Tuscan side trip. Day 6, go to Venice and sleep there. Day 7, experience Venice early, late, and slowly before leaving. The truth about 7 days in Italy is that the perfect itinerary is not the one with the most famous names. It is the one that lets Italy feel like Italy while you are still there. Rome should not feel like a race. Florence should not feel like a hallway between trains. Venice should not feel like a crowded photo stop. Italy does not reward tourists for collecting cities. It rewards the ones who give each place enough time to become more than a postcard. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, smash that like button and subscribe to When to Travel. We're all about helping you make smarter travel decisions. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. And hey, if you think your friends need this, share it. Comment below with your next destination or your biggest travel question. I'm reading all of them. Let's go.